All right, guys, welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. We are coming to you live from Winterset, Iowa. Well, maybe not live by the time you see this, but it's live for us this morning. Anyhow, I'm joined this morning by my two, I don't know what you call them, they ain't special guests. Well, they are special, but it's a different kind of helmet way and
top-tier guests.
Short bus. But anyhow, long story short, I'm joined by Warren and Easton this morning.
If you're on a short bus, that means it's probably something hereditary, so you just pretty much dissed yourself, too.
Okay. Well, whatever he says. So first thing that I'll do is apologize because I'm sure, especially in the conversation that we're getting ready to have, there will be something that will offend someone. So I'll just go ahead and get that out of the way now. But the one that we want to make sure that we are remembering or asking you guys to go leave reviews. We sure appreciate it when you do. It sure helps us on the podcast, and it moves us up in the rankings and things like that. So
and share it with a friend.
Yeah, let your buddies know that you found this podcast and that there's some good information coming, and that's what we have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Warren to be able to do a little housekeeping, saying hi to everyone that's been leaving reviews and comments.
Our YouTube dudes, Nurse Mike IN, another outstanding episode with info overload. Can you guys change the bleep sound from meh to Warren's leopard impression? That would be fantastic. That would be pretty funny. William Myers, SP4TT, awesome episode as always. Enjoy listening to these stories. Eric Robards, 1209, great pod, guys. Great pod, guys. Love hearing these stories. Holy moly. Jeremy Rupsick, cool conversation. My brother did an African hunt, and he loved it and wants to go back. Not for me, though. Love how the locals get fed and how great the trackers are. David Harrison, 9731. He says, I'm the first. Yes. I've been waiting for this all week. Jake Rotman, 7803. Guess that makes me number 2. Denver Algo, hunting grizzly bears, no way. Have you dummies not seen The Revenant? I agree. But he did survive
that movie.
The Revenant, he did survive in it.
Everybody said that was not everybody. That was an award-winning show, wasn't it?
It was an unbelievable movie.
I couldn't get through it. I thought it was so boring.
Why?
I don't know. And I'm a big fan of Leo too. Isn't that who?
DiCaprio.
Yeah.
DiCaprio. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not a fan of that one. All right. I have a story for us. I believe this is one that I've been sitting on for a little bit. I don't have my pen for following along. I'll use my pointer finger. This one is from, you guys have heard from him before, but this is a very good story as far as if you guys want an example or you have the ability to do something similar to this, this is what we need more in the hunting world and for hunters to do for other hunters. So this is from our boy Chase Knowles. This story starts all the way back before the season, back in July. I have a good-sized permission piece that I bow hunt, but I only have one access point, and it's on the north side. It makes it very hard to get in and hunt the property with the north wind. So I was out knocking on doors, neighbors' doors, not for permission, but to just hunt, or not for permission to hunt, but just permission to access where I hunt. I knocked on the neighbor's door that owns the property that borders the entire east side of the property, and he gave me permission to access through this property, but informed me that someone does hunt his field. So I asked for his number so that I wasn't going to be messing up any of his hunts, especially when I go in to hunt or anything. Lucky for me, I was going to go check out the access point. That hunter was just showing up to do some upkeep on his blinds. We began talking and hit it off. Super nice guy. We chatted throughout the bow season, keeping up with each other and how the other's seasons were going. We got on the topic of our kids and hunting. I told him that my daughter had taken her first deer, a doe, last year, and this year she is after a buck. But the permission piece that I had set up for her ended up getting leased by another hunter, so I was trying to find another place to hopefully give her a chance. He told me he knows a couple that lives not too far from us. They only let youth hunters on their property and asked if they would want to come hunt during late muzzleloader season. Or he asked him if he wanted to. Chris said absolutely, that would be great. We planned on a weekend and set the date. January 4th rolls in, and I met him at Come and Go and followed him to the property. We are greeted by the landowners, and they're as sweet as can be, filling me and my daughter Kinsley with words of encouragement. They tell us that the blind that we're going to be sitting in, and they left extra cans of propane for the heater and extra blankets on the chairs. We thank them again and head to the blind. About 30 minutes or so, 2 does come out in the field. I look at Kinsley and ask her if she's sure she wants to wait for a buck. Yep, I said, okay then. We watched the does work back out of the field. A little while later, a forked horn strolls into the field. I get excited and said, okay, Kins, here's your first buck. Let's get ready. She said, nope, Dad, I want to wait for a full-racked buck. I'm a little frustrated, thinking this might be our only shot, and he came into 20 yards, broadside. I continued to ask her if she is sure, and she was positive she wanted to wait. Pretty impressive for a 6-year-old. As I'm watching him walk off, out of the side of the window of the blind, I feel her tap my leg and say, Dad, here's a really big buck. I look out and see a wide rack and a big-bodied deer at 80 yards heading straight up to us. I immediately start to shake. I get the muzzleloader sat up, and the rest sat up on the rest for her, and tell her just to stay on him until he turns. He gets to about 40 yards and turns broadside. This is it. I asked her if she is on his shoulder, and she says, yes. Meh. Whenever you're ready, sis. Boom. As the smoke clears, I see him running into the woods and dragging his front shoulder. With tears in my eyes, I pick her up and yell, you did it, sis. She is smiling ear to ear and shaking like a leaf. After I regained my composure, I texted Rob, the gentleman who had gotten me the connection here, and that Kinsley had just taken a good buck. He was about 700 yards away in another blind with another young girl and her dad. I was so worked up that I didn't pay much attention after the shot to see where exactly he ran to. I knew he was hit in the shoulder and acted like it was a good shot. Me and Kins go out to look for blood. I look for a while in the field for blood with no luck, so we resort to trying to pinpoint what tracks were his in the snow. We find some big tracks going the way that he went and follow them. Kinsley finds the first blood, and we know where he went into the timber. We get about 10 yards into the woods, and I see a big dark mass on the ground about 30 yards up. I couldn't tell if it was a log or a deer, so I pull the binos up and see a white rack. The emotions flood back in me as we walk up to him. Kinsley gets her hands on him and is so excited. She is extremely happy, but she has no idea what this means for me. It's the greatest moment of my life. This hunt, this deer, tops any animal I've taken myself by a long shot. I am so proud. We get him gutted and headed back to the blind to warm up and wait for the others. 3 side-by-sides show up, filled with people. Rob and the dad, the daughter he was hunting with, the landowners, and even the neighbor who shows up to give us congrats. They are all giving her hugs and high fives and talking her up. We talked for a bit and got them loaded up. Before we head out, I gave them all a hug and let them know how grateful we were. On the ride home, Kinsley says, Dad, you know if I wasn't there, you would have shot that forked horn. Little sucker, LOL. That was Chase Knowles this year. But
congrats.
I think that's freaking awesome that couple only brings youth hunters and stuff. And I talked to him later about that too. He said he didn't know half of those other people. They were just that excited about a little girl getting her first deer and stuff. And so they all showed up to help him drag it out and see it and stuff and congratulate her.
That would be a core memory too.
Oh yeah, she'll always remember that.
Yep, that'll be good. That's awesome.
Thank you, Chase.
And on the other guy to think of that place to introduce him to.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You didn't have to do that either, Could just
I agree.
talk to them and gone on.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
That's really
Sometimes
cool.
things like that just work out, especially when it comes to kids, it seems like. And that's where it should work out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That happened for me once when Dad and I were antelope hunting.
Oh, yeah.
What?
We'd sat in this blind all day.
Yeah.
It's like 100-some degrees. And this really nice buck comes in. I shoot over its back.
Wasn't I with you on that?
No.
Oh.
Then a doe comes in.
You did that with me one time, too.
Yeah, same exact spot. I smoke her.
Yeah.
And so then the next day, it was Dad's turn, right? But then there was this all the antelope were down the road a little bit. Yeah, on this neighbor. So we go and ask the neighbor, and he's like, yeah, sure, but I only let youth hunt. And so so then
Dad's like, fine.
So then Dad and I go on there, and then I shoot one.
That's probably worth it, though.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. If you're not doing that for your kids, you're doing something wrong, in my opinion.
Funny.
So.
Warren's like, yeah, that's right.
But
I was like, dang, sorry, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
But you write all that stuff down so that you know that you can make sure that they pay you back someday. But so far that hasn't happened, so.
Hey, I have. You choked last year when I told you. I took you.
Yeah, we killed a turkey.
Turkeys. I told him, bring your quiver because we're going to double up this morning. And we should have. But he only killed one. And that was the whole thing of me not letting him call or nothing. It was so hard.
Yeah.
I could see him itching in the seat. I'm like, nope, I'm going to set us up here. I know where these birds are. I'm going to call them in. It worked. Halfway worked.
All right.
Which is not common for you.
No. We ready to roll on this? I'm not exactly sure how to title this, or where are the good old days, or are we in the good old days, or are we missing the good old days?
Do you have a better way to introduce it? You're the one that's the mastermind behind this one.
No, I think that's a good description. Is what happened to the good old days?
Okay.
Hunting related.
So
yeah,
I guess you want me to introduce it?
Yes.
Okay, so I've been seeing a lot on social media lately of people from the older generation. When I say that, probably 50 plus, and I'm not saying it's all of you guys because it's not, but I've seen a lot that are complaining about everything. And when I say everything, they're complaining about trail cameras, they're complaining about food plots, they're complaining about box blinds, they're complaining about basically anything they can complain about. And then they're whining about that it's not like the good old days anymore.
The big one's mapping, too.
Mapping, all of that.
I've heard.
And I guess where I'm getting to is it's just like, to me, what is the point of doing that? So if it bothers you so much, either go take some kind of legal action trying to get that reversed, or quit whining about it. And then for them as well, I'm jealous. So you guys got to see the good old days back when nobody else was hunting. Nobody else could go and find these places. Nobody else had cell cams. You had all of these advantages, and here you're whining about it all the time. And yet the younger generation never gets to experience any of that, because that stuff is probably never going to be reversed. There's never going to be a time again where there's probably not going to be cell cams, or not going to be people using food plots, or there's not going to be maps that allow you to find a lot of these hidden gems. I mean, it's going to be that's probably changed forever at this point. And so the younger generation has never got to experience any of that, and never will. And so at what point do you either take action and try to reverse some of these things if you're so passionate about it, or just quit whining?
Well, I think that's a lot. I would present this to you of a question I would have on this.
For those of you that can't see, he's pointing at me.
Yes, because Dad's the only one that would have lived through these times.
Yeah.
But
I remember him somewhat. Like, I obviously didn't get to experience like what Dad did, but I do remember as a kid, like, especially out west, being able to go to public places where we weren't seeing other people and stuff.
But so here's what I guess I would say on that. And I guess if there's a so-called expert, only because I've lived it, or I was there. I can tell you this. When I was 20, or in my 20s, and I'm starting into bow hunting, it was pretty new. Like, okay, so let me give people a kind of a for instance. There hadn't been a turkey decoy made. I made my first turkey decoy out of cardboard. There was no such thing. And you look at the decoys of today, man, there's not one company, there's 100 companies, and there's some that look unbelievably lifelike. I would have 40 years or 30 years ago, I guess, I would have never thought that you could possibly do that, make a decoy of that caliber. There was no tree stands being sold at that time. Okay, so the very first tree stand that I bought was a TSS. It was a wooden platform tree stand, climbing stand. There was no such thing as a hang-on stand. There was no saddles.
Were like tree stands a known thing, but you just went and made your own then, or what?
Yeah, people were putting tree stands in, but they like just
2x4s.
Yeah, 2x4s, a ladder or something, or you built a stand and you put that in there. But then you had to screw steps to the tree, to climb up. So I'm sure probably per capita, a lot more people were getting hurt because it was way more dangerous.
Everyone Brock went up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're going to get all the way down to that, there no cordless drills. So you were nailing stuff in. You had a hammer and nails, and you nailed it in there. And then it doesn't take long for a nail to work loose. So one of the biggest inventions.
I didn't think of that.
They freaking screwing it in.
Yeah, there was no cordless drills. But so you think about this though, that one of the very first things.
Was there no cordless drills, or was it just a matter of if you didn't you'd have to be some rich dude with a ranch that you got the newest new? Was it genuinely not invented yet?
I don't know. Or? I mean, I guess for instance, Dad, my dad didn't have one. We didn't have one, so I just assumed that there wasn't. I don't remember when they came around. Yeah. I mean, the years I'm talking right now are early 80s. There might have been a cordless drill, but it was probably big. It was like bag phones and stuff like that, But the other one was, because I do remember, the first time I saw a screw and step, I was like, oh, holy
That's
cow.
smart.
This is, now I could buy them and just screw those in and unscrew them. And I was like, wow, you can get up in a tree. So when I look back at some of that stuff and I think about, I do remember meeting guys that were hunting were we're already talking about, well, you should have seen what it was a few years ago. And there was already people saying you can't get permission. Mm-hmm. That has been a statement being made since day one. And part of that probably comes from the fact that I do remember guys, I wasn't in that era. The era before that, I guess, would have been the 50s, 60s. You didn't even ask. You just hunted wherever you wanted. Nobody cared. It didn't matter. So there was no asking permission because nobody cared. But that would go back to 1883, like these movies and stuff, and the first barbed wire fence. Yeah. It didn't exist. You didn't know. Nobody blocked anything off. The one that you probably would remember most is Montana when we moved up to the northwest corner, up to above Whitefish into Olney. And that was, you could see what it was. And that was all the whitetail deer. Yeah. I mean, it went from a mecca, meaning they had hundreds of whitetail deer. People were hunting them, and guys were killing some good deer. They weren't killing a lot of Boone and Crockett kind of deer, but 150.
Well, the sheds they were. Our sheds, the neighbor gave us, but he had other sheds that were from
big,
a long time ago that were big freaking sheds.
No, but I also still remember. When, what was it, Sportsman's Warehouse, maybe in Kalispell?
Yeah, there was a Sportsman's Warehouse, yeah.
Pretty nice one?
Yeah.
I still remember that they had the top two or three whitetails in Montana, and they were all from the northwest corner, and they were like 230.
Yeah, they were good.
Not 190, 200, like 230.
Holy crap.
Giant deer. And all of them were like Flathead County, all northwest Montana deer. But that wasn't really hunters that ruined that, right? That's more...
No, and that's what I was going to say. A lot of what's going on is not necessarily hunters ruining hunting. What I think the couple people that you heard them complaining about, that was actually physically, tangibly right in front of them. This is affecting my hunt. There's more affecting it, I guess, is my point. And if you're one of those guys out there that it's bothering you, you're going to have to get over it because it's going to continue to get harder. There's no way around it. There's going to be less land 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now. I don't want to say there's going to be less animals because in some places we've seen a reversal. We've seen better. We've seen the states take care of the animals, found out that hunters could contribute to that, and I think we're hunting more parks and things like that now than we were back then because they didn't understand the parks were just off limits.
Yeah.
And I'm only saying that in the few places that I've lived that is happening. However, there's more land leased. There's more land. People have found out what these animals are worth, and so it's costing more to hunt animals. We did a topic on that not too long ago. So I'm a mixed emotion guy on this. Is there a problem?
So what do you think the state record for Montana is?
Now, from what you just said, it'd be 230 something or 240 something.
Is that your guess?
240 something, 242.
Yours?
252.
Wow. Did you know that?
No.
252 and an eighth.
Let's go.
The Brett Johnson buck shot with a rifle on the Flathead Indian Reservation in western Montana in 1988 is among the few. He has one of the greatest typical frames ever.
It's a typical?
No,
Oh.
typical frames at a gross of 216 and an eighth. Or no, 216 and 0.8, which would tie the world record with another 40 and 2/8 inches of non-typical growth piled on.
Oh my gosh.
Subtract just 5 and 2/8 inches for typical deductions, and you have a giant that ranks just behind the Frank
5
Pleskik
inches?
buck of 252 to hold the position of Montana's all-time number 2 non-typical, but he has such a great frame, he looks even bigger.
You'll have to 100% put a picture of that deer on there.
Oh, he's
if
giant.
you're telling me that he was 216 as a typical and only had 5 inches of deductions,
Yeah, typical
that's
deductions.
unreal. That is nuts. I thought
And that's a Montana whitetail.
that is freaking crazy. That is one of the prettiest deer you could ever dream of.
Which for most people that don't understand, Montana whitetails are
Right now, they're nothing.
like typically I think that you're a 150 would be considered an.
At least all the places that I hunted. I'm not saying that there isn't the occasional. And back then, I here's what I guess I did physically see. So what we're talking about is when we lived in the northwest corner of Montana, everyone that had hunted years past had some good deer that either mounted or had racks around. Or you go to the archery shops. What was Aaron's place?
No, Spirit Quest.
Spirit Quest Archery. He had some good deer, pictures of deer. And then when we get there, we buy 10 acres in the middle of the national forest outside of town, 26 miles outside of town. And we were lucky to have 10 deer that would come through our property, and the biggest one was like 130. And we were super pumped when we saw that deer. When he showed up one night, and then that was it. He was gone. What I guess I'm getting at is that before we moved up there, I knew that area, and it was so bad with deer that you couldn't drive there in the evening. You could not go up there. There would be hundreds of deer on the road. I mean, just hundreds of them. And then it got to the point where you could drive 75 miles an hour and not even think twice.
Yeah.
There was just none.
Well, we got to talk about, not that we need to get into this or not, but the big reason why that flipped so hard.
That was
weird.
Lack of control of predators.
Correct. They have grizzlies. They had wolves already, but didn't they reintroduce them
They reintroduced them
to get more of them?
Yes, in the glacier and Yellowstone, and they thought they would stay there, and they didn't stay there.
Yeah. So they had grizzlies already, which are on the endangered species list. Reintroduced wolves, and then the mountain lions. Out of those 3, there was only one that had a season on it for the majority of the time, and that was mountain lions. Grizzlies, still to this day, you could go up there, and if you'd ever like to go see grizzly bears outside of a national park, go to northwest on 93 out of Whitefish, Montana, and you'll find probably more than you'd see in Glacier, and they're still on the endangered species list somehow. And then wolves, after how many years was it till they reintroduced, till they finally were like, holy crap, we need to tag 10?
Yeah, they had a whole plan, and they didn't follow the plan, and it ended up in court, and then it just drug on and drug on.
But that one started with when they legalized hunting wolves, they realized how screwed they were on it. And the first year, I believe it was a tag. Second year, it was like you could get 2 tags to hunt and another tag to trap or something. And then after that, it's been like 5 tags you can hunt, another 7 you can get for trapping or something. It's unreal.
They were so far behind by that time.
They're trying to catch up.
They couldn't catch up.
Yeah. And so elk, deer, just about everything is wiped out.
So how does that translate to the guy who lives on the East Coast or down south or Midwest? And what that is the coyote. There was no coyotes when I grew up in Virginia. The only thing you heard about them, and now they're everywhere. They're all over the East Coast.
I'd say you have 2 relative of that, though, because, a coyote, yeah, depends on where they're at as far as their damage to a deer population. But the biggest damage to a deer population, I would think, or at least your hunting access and everything, is people, especially on the east. I don't know how I know that we live in Iowa, which is pretty, for us, it's very populated, but as far as the average states go, it's not all that
It's pretty
populated.
rural.
Yeah, it's
still
rural.
pretty rural.
And I know that we've had places where either farmers come in and tear up the ground for, tear out all the trees and everything, so they've got more farm ground, or towns are expanding to where they have subdivisions now and everything, which all of that plays into taking more land. So that's another thing that I'd say Midwest to East is a bigger deal.
Wasn't it the 1980s though when there was the highest hunter numbers?
I think there was probably more hunters then, but you had more places to go. There was more ground to hunt. So guys were scattered more, I would imagine.
So you think now that
I don't think it was. I think there was only like 9 million or something. But I could be off on that. Let me look.
I'm wondering if it was off the population, like percentage of the population, or if there's more hunters now, but the population has grown so much that it's not, the numbers don't match. You know what I'm saying? Like in the 1980s, if there was only, say, 150 million people in America and there was 10 million hunters.
Yeah, so I know recent years we've been sitting around 13 to like 14.7 million hunters. In 1980s, it peaked around 17 million people that were hunting and had a license. Since 1960, the actual number of hunters increased until peaking at 16.7 million in 1982, which to date would, as far as I know, would still be the largest amount of hunters America's ever had, besides maybe
so
back
in
in the
Indian days. So much worse than when we're. How could it be so much worse now?
Well, I think because
part of what I just said too is a big part of it. These towns, Winterset has not always been this big.
What was the population in you said 1980 was the peak?
1982.
See what the population of the U.S. was in 1982.
Well, I think the other one that you have to factor in there, and because I've seen it and I don't remember how many tens of thousands of acres are lost every single day to urban development.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So here's
you're saying even though there's less hunters, but that it's more confined on the places that you can go. What about the West? Because I'm sure that's happened some out there, but I don't feel like near the rate as
I think
the Midwest and back East.
I think it's definitely the only thing that we're extremely fortunate. The good old days was the president that Roosevelt that freaking set aside all the national forests that he did.
I mean, that's got to be saving so much.
Oh, if it wasn't
Especially
for him,
now.
hunting would be tough in the West. It would be really tough. So he.
Did you see a bunch of people back then? And the only difference is that just everybody didn't have Instagram to complain about it.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely. Definitely, I think the electronics and things like that have contributed to some of the demise, but it also has contributed to some of the good things.
Agreed, but I'm just thinking of I still remember as a kid you talking about going to certain places and there being tons of people, and then you'd be hunting a week later than what would be considered normal and stuff like that because it was so much better. And so that's where I'm trying to wrap my head around is it honestly not that much different than it was? It's just way easier for people to talk about it because they are way more connected than they've ever been.
I definitely think when there's issues, and I've said this about EHD and CWD, they've been there the whole time. We weren't communicating with we didn't know when there was a major outbreak in another county because we didn't talk to those people.
Right.
Unless you had a relative that lived there or a friend that lived there and they're like, hey, we just found a bunch of dead deer.
Yeah.
But now we don't just talk to the person there. We hear from everyone else, and now the states are looking at us. We just had Andy Kellner and those guys from the Iowa DNR here, and they've got a program where now you can go into and see how many deer are dying in a county that they've had reported to them. Mm-hmm. That stuff didn't happen. So where it might be not the good old days and we've lost some of this, at the same time, we are learning from it and we are making it better. I don't care where you are, who you are. You're always going to look back and say that something back then was better.
Oh yeah.
It's
also
just
how your brain remembers things.
Yeah, it's just but is it factual? Is it, man, if that's what you're going to live, you're going to have a tough time. You got to get past that. You got to say, I'm listening to Chase Knowles' story at the beginning here. Okay, I remember when I hear a story like that, I think of you guys. I think of us going antelope hunting, but more importantly, I think like your first mule deer. I think of your first deer, and you guys being little and hunting with me or going with me, and you guys weren't even hunting. And I'm like, man, that was the good old days. But that was the good old days because that was the age you were in, and that's what we were doing, and that it was a ton of fun. It's still, this turkey season will be part of the good old days, and it hasn't even gotten here yet because we're going to experience something new. We're going to try something new. We're going to hunt together. We're going to see something. So, like I said, I don't want to sound like a fence rider, but I am 100% because I do understand where guys are coming from on the technology side.
Yeah, that I do too. But I also I just I don't see where you're gaining anything from complaining about it constantly. I think that there can be discussions had on it, but just whining about it isn't going to do anything. But it also sounds like, listening to you, that there's always evolutions to this. Because I'm sure when it went from you could go wherever you want to now you had to have permission, those guys probably lost their minds.
Oh, I'm sure.
From being able to go hunt. I'm trying to fathom being able to go hunt any piece I wanted and not have to worry about it.
I wonder how many people were getting shot after that.
I wonder how many 80-inch sheds got thrown in the trash because guys didn't care.
Yeah.
Or they were cut up into dog chews, or they were made into, because they just didn't. Because I can tell you, in the state of Montana alone, I've seen hundreds of Pope and young deer, pushing Boone and Crockett kind of deer that were never mounted or nothing mattered, especially whitetails. They just didn't care.
Yeah.
I think Montana was kind of always a special instance, though, looking at it now after
they even had huge
being a little
bulls.
bit older and living some other places, that Montana is remote enough, and that there is some places where those guys live just in the middle of nowhere and have tons and tons of animals, that it's still kind of a hidden treasure on as far as what those guys have.
Right.
I think it's worth asking the perspective of the older gentleman nowadays. Are you complaining about, obviously things have changed, and some guys I hear that say all of this technology and everything is cheating, and all these new things is cheating. It makes it way too easy to hunt and everything. And then the other guy here that's complaining about it is that it's ruined hunting as far as it's too hard to hunt. Like, it's causing issues that they can't be successful anymore as far as what the times have come to. Maybe that's technology. Maybe that's the amount of hunters. I don't know what they're referring to exactly. But in both of those scenarios, who's right and who's wrong, or either. And I think, to be honest with you, the guy that's saying that all this technology has made it all that much easier, you could also argue that with everything that we have access to right now as young people, and all the new things that we have has also been given to everybody. Everybody has the exact same access as what we do, which means for the first time probably everybody's pretty well on an even playing field if they want to be. And with that, okay, are you going to keep complaining about it? It might be more difficult to hunt because there's more hunters, but if you have all these tools, all this technology that's supposed to be making life so much easier, why can't you still get it done? And why can't you find another alternative?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, that's just, I guess I am stating that, but that's just something I've thought of, that how can you complain about some of it when it's not like just some guys have Onyx. It's not like just some guys have a trail camera. Like, I know so many old guys. I've got a guy that we hunt next to that is, I think he's 70-something, and he's got a cell cam, and he loves his little cell camera. And he says, I don't understand it. I don't even know how to turkey hunt or nothing, but I got all this information people telling me, and I'll go out and I'll go find one, And he doesn't complain a bit. He loves to hunt. He loves to fish. He's been hunting his whole life, but he still goes. He doesn't complain about it. He uses it. And instead of him complaining about it and trying to stay in the old days, he uses the technology that he has to help him be better. So I don't understand where the advantage. They make it sound like us young kids have all this advantage over them, when in all reality, I would almost argue that they have 10 times more advantage over us.
Especially
as in
a lot
you
of them
guys
can afford a lot more.
Yeah, you can probably afford a lot more things. And the other thing is, you've lived through a lot more than we have. You've hunted a lot different scenarios. When I go to a piece of land that I haven't hunted before, and I'm not understanding why deer aren't going through certain places, you've probably hunted somewhere in the past 40 years that you saw that scenario where you saw that the moment of this place got multiple people that had permission on it, the deer didn't act the same anymore, and you knew how to adapt to it. Now I'm learning all that. I don't get to just know it. So in all reality, I feel like the older guys are, if they just own up to their knowledge, they'd be at an advantage compared to the younger ones. But
well, I think it comes down to, why do you hunt? I mean, why? Everyone has a different reason, you know. And I guess for me, the big draw to hunting for me is always will be, is I love the one-on-one competition with a wild animal. No other humans involved. And I think that is one of the encroachments that some of these guys are talking about, is that it could be depending on where you live and where you're hunting and what you're dealing with, that may be more difficult to come by anymore, because no longer are they able to go out and one-on-one trying to figure out this deer, whether they're using a trail camera to know that deer exists or not. Even once he exists, there's other people around. They're bumping the deer. They're moving him. Other people got trail camera. All of a sudden, now he's on Facebook and he sees the picture of his deer, and someone has named the deer and things like that. And there is a loss of the unknown. And I think that is something that will never come back. And that is, I'm not complaining about it because I'm just moving on, but it was nice. I feel like there was more world records, there was more state records, there was more all kinds of stuff going on in the 80s and 90s because there wasn't all this technology to find them. Or no one knew it was coming, and all of a sudden, whoop, someone just killed it. And man, it was like crazy cool information for everyone to get that at the same time. And now it's like, it's so constant, it's so daily, weekly, monthly, that it's lost its attraction or that feel. I think that's what those guys might be referring to, you know. And so going back to what you said, though, Easton, about, okay, so everyone has the same ability to get on OnX and everything. The guy that would take the time, I was one of them, and I knew a lot of other hunters that didn't. I'm going to go back to then. Mom and I have worked hard. We've got a little bit of money. We're not filthy rich by any means, but we bought our own piece of ground. So I have a place I can go hunt. And that was a dream of mine, something that I wanted to do. But if I go back to my fire department days when I first started, I didn't have that affordability. I had to hunt a public piece. I had to go places. So what did I do? I outworked everyone else when it came to hunting. You guys went with me. I would go. I remember you spinning the wheel at the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks down there, because they had a big map, and I would go down there and I would scour the maps of where I thought the elk would be, because I didn't have a computer to sit down at and see where all this is. And then I would find it. Then I would check with them, and block management was my little key, my little nugget. That block management, for people that don't know what that is, some states, Montana was one of them, had a way for you, still has a way for you to hunt private ground without paying anything. You just basically, people had signed up, said they would let people on. The state was paying them to open up their ground. And I would find these. You could only get 5 maps in a day. So I would go down there and I would find the 5 that I wanted. I get those 5 maps. I come back. I would drive to those places and look and see until I honed in on the one. Now I get a topographical map of that area. Now I take that topographical map and I go into there and I say, okay, I think I might be on to some elk, you know. And the average guy wasn't going to spend that time and that effort to do that. What the gentleman that you might be referring to, I think, is saying, you don't have to do that anymore. You hit one button on the keystroke and it pops up. You get the DNR's maps there, and a guy is able to do that sitting in a chair. That's what I think he's referring to, you know, and so you can't outwork them anymore that way. But I would say you just keep evolving. And so now everyone has that same ability, but the one thing that is going to always work when it comes to hunting, and that is, if you put your frickin' feet on the ground in those places, you're going to be better off. And so you go do that, and you go find out, or you figure out a way to knock on doors and get permission. I've done that as well. But I could go back and tell you that it isn't as easy as it used to be. I don't do it as much. I own my own piece of ground now, so I don't have to do that. But I used to have lists of, you saw them, of different states. Like when we went turkey hunting, and I would have a list of, and not all of them were landowners that said yes. Some would still be a name that I didn't know. And so now you can do that now with OnX. You could pull those up and you could put them all in folders, you know? So what I'm saying is, I guess, I understand both sides because I have lived it, but there is a way. Keep evolving with this and keep moving, and don't ever let someone else, don't let that be an excuse to stop working that hard. If you're willing to put in the effort, put in the effort. And I mean, what you guys did last year, was it last year or 2 years ago, not this past fall, but on the mule deer.
Yeah.
You know, you just put in the effort and it paid off. You got a shot at a great deer. A lot of guys don't get that opportunity, and it's because they don't want to put in the effort, you know. And when honestly, you have been given a lot of tools that make it easier, you know. And so it is when the technology comes out of the blue and hits you in the face, meaning, you know, the cellular camera that someone, you hear the story, and I still, and I firmly disagree with using a cellular camera in this mode. And I'm not saying that I know who this person is or anything like that, but I've heard the story. Guy sitting in his kitchen, and boop, gets oh, look there, oh my gosh, there's the deer I've been looking for. Picks up his bow or his crossbow or his gun, runs out of the house, goes down to a hay bale. The buck's standing there because this is real time. Shoots it, kills it. Is the guy that is bait here, that's what he's saying, is that guy didn't get anything like what he knew you could get out of hunting, and now it's taken that opportunity away from someone else too, whether it's him personally or not.
If that was everybody's outlook on it, I would be much more reasonable with their complaining and understanding of their complaining. But I disagree with you. A lot of them that are complaining about it all, you have a good mindset on it, in my opinion, from what you just explained. A lot of them are complaining about it because they're too much of a pansy to get with the program, and they don't want to actually learn something new, and they're too stubborn. And now everybody else is getting to do all these things, and they're mad that some other dude next to him has OnX and was able to find that it's a public piece that he's on that he found in the 80s, and he's there now. Get over it.
Yeah, that's really probably what most of it is. They're upset that other people have the opportunity to find that or to go to those places.
The guy that thinks of it that way is not the issue. The guy that thinks of it like that,
to those ones, it's like, you had 30 years, bud. Why don't you give the young guy some time?
Yeah. So my opinion is it's the ones that are pissy about really any change, and they want to complain about it, when in all reality, everybody has an ability to change things. But the way everything is evolved as quick as it has, especially in the hunting industry, is like 10, 15 years behind the rest of the world in industry, in technology. In the past 5 years is probably the first time it's really starting to genuinely catch up with what the rest of the world has for technology. And there's no slowing it down. Like
humans in general, it's always going to evolve.
Exactly. So you either are going to have to learn to understand it. You may not like it that much. If I'm being completely honest, I've never had the ability to not have any communication with anybody. No, none of the technology we have right now. If I could just have my bow and an arrow, and I have to go do like the things you're talking about, where I'm trying to find a map, or I'm hiking and I'm trying to find these different things, I genuinely believe I would like that a lot more. But what is the benefit of me doing that anymore when I'm going to pretty much just screw up a lot of stuff or set myself way behind? And I do have to, if a lot of the places that we can hunt are going to be other hunters there, I've got to keep up. It's simply, as much as it doesn't have to be, it's a competition a little bit, as far as I've got to be able to find the next spot that nobody knows about so that I can get the next advantage. And so if I'm not with the program on it, you can complain all you want, but that's your own fault. You need to figure it out.
It might be interesting to see what happened, though, if you did just do that.
Yeah, you might. And maybe maybe you're not influenced by certain things to try other places or something. Yeah, that's true.
You may do way better than you think. You know, and then, too, your expectations probably aren't going to be set on the 180 that you got one picture of at 1 a.m, you know, and then when a decent hunter in Iowa terms, 140 or 150 inch deer comes by, you're going to smoke it and be stoked,
Mm-hmm.
and not know if he's 3 or 7.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I don't want anyone to think that I'm not like it's hard because I'm not taking either side, I guess. But I remember making the statement before we moved to Iowa. I will shoot every 150-inch deer because that's a freaking big deer.
Yeah, you ain't doing that anymore.
And I don't do it. I'm guilty of falling into the same thing that everyone else falls into, that it's here, this is what's going on. Because so then I evolved, and I didn't know I was going to evolve into that. I would say I'm kind of diverting or going back, killing the first deer that I ever set my mind on that I wanted to try to kill that deer. I never even considered that. Because we're talking about a guy that when in the 90s, I'm in Virginia, and I wanted to see a Pope and Young deer. That's it. I didn't want to kill one. I just wanted to see one. Just one that I could look at and say, I think that would be 125 inches or bigger. Because I'm positive that up until I was about 20-some years old, I never saw one. I never saw a deer that was that big.
Yeah.
But yet the videos were coming out and stuff like that, and you were seeing, oh man, there's a lot of them in a lot of places. And a lot of it was Montana, a lot of it was the Midwest and stuff like that. But there wasn't a lot of them on the East Coast. Not that there wasn't any, but there wasn't very many.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think if we didn't have cameras at all and we just took, let's say, one of our farms, what do you think the percentage of those bucks that we would know about that are there? And let's just assume that you change your strategy some because you know you don't have cameras, so you spend a little more time in the summer, a little more time scouting.
Right.
The tough part about that is I still don't think you have a baseline even with having cameras. I mean, I know we're running cameras on a lot of stuff, but you miss a lot.
Well, I'm just saying, of the deer that we have on camera, that you know are there all, or not necessarily all the time. Like this deer is here at some, he comes through once a month or whatever.
If I'm not assuming the young, like smaller ones, if I'm looking at like our 3 to 4 year olds, up and comers, and big boys or bigger deer, I would think. Like I'm thinking of one farm in specific where I had GW. I think I would know probably 60-70%. Because every one of it, as much as I didn't like have super close encounters with them all, me, you, Joey, or somebody saw just about all of our up and comers throughout the year. The only one nobody saw this year for the first time was Wampy.
I saw him.
Oh, there you go. Like,
yeah, but I'm
like
saying
our top 10 or 15 deer all had been seen.
But those all would have been. Okay, what's your answer?
So here's what I would say is that whether you realize it or not, you wouldn't even have been sitting in the places you were sitting at to see them if you didn't already have a video or a trail camera of them. You would have had to start with what, if that's what you're saying, is we know nothing. We're going into a farm. We're going to say, we're just going to hunt this with no cameras, no anything.
We're just using the cameras as an idea to know of like roughly how many of those bucks were there.
I would say 10%.
That was my exact number.
You're going to know 10% of the deer that exist there.
Yeah.
And therefore,
it's astronomically low.
I don't think so.
You're hunting a whole season.
Well, let's take Wampy. He's a perfect example. So I'm probably the only one that drives around there, but I don't think I ever saw him in the summer. Maybe one time. I think maybe one time that I can remember. Did you ever see him?
I don't drive around up there.
Okay, so never saw him. And then hunting, I saw him one time with Eli. That's it. That's all I saw him. And then did you ever see him hunting?
No, that's what I said. I haven't seen him.
That deer, I think you would have been with no cameras. You'd have probably been like, that deer passes through, or is not a regular deer, or is a random buck. In fact, he's there pretty much all the time.
Well, the question isn't if he's there all the time. It's whether or not you'd see the deer that are there. And you saw him.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how many of them.
Okay, and I going with what you're saying. Yeah, you saw him. You see him once. That's during the season, so you only have a couple weeks here to try to maneuver if it's a deer you decide you want to try to kill. And so you're trying to maneuver on that. I'm just telling you, having hunted then without trail cameras and things like that, your standard will go down for sure because you want to be successful. I mean,
you're answering a different question. The question isn't what is the standard you would shoot. The question is not whether or not the deer lives there or not. The question is, out of the deer that are there, how many are you physically going to see? And that is a different answer than the one that I'm going to change my standards for. Out of the deer that we know that are there, I disagree with you guys on where we're hunting specifically on cameras, because where we saw some of these deer this year were places we don't have cameras. And we hunted specifically because there wasn't cameras. And we're going to different spots. And out of the deer that we do know and have a baseline of, we saw the vast majority of them. Were they 400 yards away at some points? Yes. But if we're basically, or as a baseline answering the question, would you know they exist on your land with or without the camera? I think you would not know how many are really there without cameras. I think it would go way down. But I'm saying specifically where we're talking here, I don't think a camera would affect how many deer we know that are there. There may be a few that we don't see because we're not getting back in there far enough as much as we normally do. But in my opinion, we haven't even hunted that place this much this year. And between me and him, we saw just about every big boy that we've had for the past 3 years.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I think though, because I think the cameras give you intel of like, you know that there's a shooter there, and so then you do see some of them because you're doing things different with that. It'd be really, really interesting to hunt one place 1 year and like have one person hunt it. You could have multiple people hunt it, but then somebody else that can look at the cameras and then see, have them document how many deer, how many
so
bucks
the person
they saw.
hunting doesn't get to see the
Correct.
cameras.
And then you cross-reference at the end of the year how many you knew. Because like I'm trying to think of it
That'd
right
be
now.
fun.
Well, I'm thinking like let's take that same place, and let's say that next year we say, okay, we're not going to run any cameras on it. Immediately to me that really screws with my gut because I'm like, oh,
Bait here.
Because then it's like, well, I know RJ was there last year.
You're trying to go off
And
of
I'm
your
like,
old photos.
Exactly.
Well, that's already
that's
what I'm
saying.
doing.
But that's what I'm saying is if you never knew in the first place,
Yeah.
like how, because I'm like, well, he could be huge, but he could have died during the summer or something. And then am I going to wait for him when I have a deer like PK come by?
I believe
Probably not.
I believe
I'm probably smoking him.
this has got to, and maybe you never got the opportunity when you were younger to hunt places where you're genuinely trying to harvest something large or the most mature deer or something. But my point is I think that there would be an argument to be had for some of these old timers that would tell you they had some instinct that is no longer there anymore because now they trust a camera or what other guys are telling them or what information they have on things. And yes, they may still get a gut feeling to go in here and hunt a specific spot.
Or would it come
But
back?
I would be willing to bet you talk to your old Indians, your old timers that had literally nothing and were successfully killing really big stuff would probably tell you that, I don't know, always know if there's a big one in here or that big world record, but sometimes you just know. Sometimes you got that feeling that tells you, keep waiting, something's going to show up. And I would be willing to bet they're right. And we don't have that anymore.
I'm just trying to think, too, though, how hard it would be to hone in on one deer without
Cameras?
It'd be tough.
I mean, like, because you're talking, you're going to have so little information to go off of.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing is that here's what's going to happen nowadays. If you try to do that, I think that would be so much fun, but it would be very, very frustrating because here's what's going to happen. You're going to have to go back to putting boots on the ground. When you put boots on the ground, you're putting pressure. When you put pressure, most of the farms that we hunt are not big enough to hold the deer, meaning if we bump them, there's a good chance they're crossing a fence onto someone else's property. And so therefore, here we would not know, making it fun, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, now every neighbor is like, bait here. We're seeing all kinds of deer because those guys are over there pounding around all the time and they're killing them, and so you're helping the neighbor who does have pictures of them and things like that. And so that's where you kind of have to keep up, in order to make it an even playing field, as far as if the whole goal is to kill the biggest, and again, that's what has to be set for you. And I am as guilty as anyone, because I grew up in a place where I didn't see Pope and young deer to the point where now I've got 50 some of them on the wall, and you keep going, you keep pushing the limit. Maybe it's not bigger, because I don't care if I ever kill a bigger deer. 200 is not my mark. I've killed a 183 now. I'm not looking for a 190. I still love the.
You weren't looking for anything over a 150 either.
No,
and here we are at a 180.
Yeah, but I wasn't looking for a 180.
What I heard earlier is we were looking for 125.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, my point is, a lot of especially when it comes to elk, the only reason I have a few big elk on the wall is they showed up first.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those big bulls are freaking sweet.
Yeah, but
just get those
you
big,
couldn't wait.
long, sweeping beams.
I've only seen one of
just
them.
like
He
a
made me
big
poop
buck.
my pants. Well, I've only seen one of them close up, and he made me poop my pants. So,
but so I guess I hear the guy that's complaining. I kind of know where he's coming from on some of the stuff, that the box blinds and the electronics and all that stuff, but it's not going to go away.
mm-mm.
So you have to figure out a way to make the good old days now.
Yep.
Enjoy it.
You have to enjoy what's going on, so that
You don't have, especially if some of these old dudes, I'm sure maybe they don't, but I would think that maybe some of them have some of their own places or a family member that they're hunting and stuff. If you got some places where you don't have to deal with that many other guys, maybe just a couple or something, you don't have to use all this stuff. Like, a lot of this stuff comes into play when you're really needing to like, you got to go find new properties. You got to go find new public places and stuff like that, where there's all these other people that are competing with the same thing you're trying to do. You got to try to give yourself a little bit of an advantage. But, like, for us, we're lucky enough that I still hunt one, or I guess it's a couple farms that I have permission on that has a significant amount of pressure from other hunters. But outside of that, any of our other stuff, you don't have to use the fancy new stuff. But for me, I thoroughly enjoy some of the technology for the sake of tracking and stuff, as far as like seeing where we've come, seeing where I have gone and tried to hunt specific spots and the types of hunts I've had. And like, Onyx for me is probably not as much of a mapping tool to find new places or find public or this, that, or the other. It's probably more of a virtual journal for me. And anybody at the office here knows that I do everything on paper. And it's the 21st century, and everybody gives me crap because I have binders of all my projects and everything. But when it comes to Onyx, I can go out on a coyote hunt and mark exactly where I sat, and I can write down the wind and the pressure or whatever else, if I had something come in, the calls I used and stuff, so that I can learn. And that's what I'm always doing, is learning. I love to learn. And so you don't have to always use them as this amazing, immaculate thing that makes you have 10 times better advantage than the other person. I don't understand why it always has to be such a negative thing when a dude could use Onyx simply to track his hunts. It's pretty easy. I mean, it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Well, I think that the one that it's the ones that directly affect, and the cellular camera can directly affect, like the situation that I described earlier. I will probably, I don't even want to say probably, I'm certain I will never do that. I don't care how long I live or how much more better they get at service and everything. I'll never set a trail camera out and then go hunt a deer when it shows up on there. I'm not saying I'll never use a cellular camera, because the place where I think that cellular cameras have a place is for the guy who does live somewhere where he has to work and his place to hunt is farther away, and it's the only way that he gets to go hunting, to have an idea of what he's got going on there, whether he's using it for surveillance on his property to know if other people are hunting it, or whether he's using it to know the deer are there, or both. That is a great place to have that. Or you put it in an area where you don't want to go in and disturb the deer. And so you have it in there and you know what's there. And then you do all your hunting around it. That's the place where I feel like cellular cameras belong. However, people find ways of taking them and setting up a number of them so that they can pattern a deer and be able to kill that deer. I won't do that. I'm not going to knock someone who does it. That's their thing. If they kill a deer that I'm hunting doing it, will it hurt a little more? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and lie to someone and say it won't. But at the same time, you just move on because it's going to happen.
Yeah. You just fart.
That was Nick. Holy cow.
What the frick, man?
I will say, I have to admit, I agree with you on the going out, like getting a trail camera picture and going and shooting them and stuff. I will admit, though, I 100% use trail cameras as a cheater camera for coyotes. I am sitting there at night waiting for something to pop up. Oh, I need all the help I can get.
You do.
And if I see one of them suckers up there, I'm running. But anyways.
Well, I don't know if we helped this argument or heard it or just kind of brought it to light.
I think it went well, though.
Fair enough.
What you got? For a wacky fact. In 2018, 13-year-old Jaquan Faulkner from Minneapolis set up a hot dog stand outside his home. After a complaint to the health department about his unlicensed operation, city officials chose to support his entrepreneurial spirit. Health inspectors provided guidance on food safety, supplied necessary equipment, and collectively paid the $87 fee for his permit.
Since when was that a thing?
That's cool.
I 100% support.
I would have put that. I would rather pay that $87 than pay freaking taxes.
What
Yeah.
Especially after we see where they're all going.
Yeah.
What year was that?
2018, yeah.
Really? Wow, I was thinking that was going to be like back in the 80s or something.
No, that was in the good old days there.
Yeah. I can't believe a government did that. That's freaking awesome.
Do with this knowledge whatever you think is best. Men who marry after age 25 often live longer compared to those who marry at a younger age.
They're saying procrastinate as long as you can.
I'm just wondering what's taking the years off the life.
If you're with them that long.
Which would mean that it's what?
The woman.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's that. I'm with you on that. I think that was implied.
Did I tell you guys about Sober Sue last time?
We're joking, by the way, if we have any women listeners.
Yes,
we have 2 happily married men, I think, in this podcast booth.
Did I do Sober Sue one last time?
I remember Sober Sue.
I might have done this one last time. Maybe, but I can't remember. Maybe I pocketed it.
Sober Sue.
In the early 1900s, Sober Sue attracted crowds for her inability to smile, with the theater offering $1,000, and this is in the 1900s. $1,000 was a ton of money to anyone who could make her laugh. Despite attempts from top comedians, none succeeded. It was later revealed that she had facial paralysis.
That's a scam. Did they know that? Like, did the people betting on her? Or
I don't
sure
think
the people
so, because
betting
they said it was
that.
later revealed.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if the theater knew that and was like, yeah.
I don't
just
know.
won't tell anybody yet. That's freaking funny.
That is funny.
Well, now all they got to do is get Botox and they could do that one.
Yeah.
Or they're permanently smiling. They can't.
Paris Hilton.
All right, guys, that's it for today. Hope that if you're driving down the road, you've enjoyed the last hour or so. If you're one of those guys that's older like me, 50-something, then I hope you're still enjoying the days. I mean,
I pray to God everybody's watching this on YouTube.
yeah, because that was quite interesting. I just got lowered.
What? That was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyhow, those of you that are out there that are looking and wishing you had the good old days back, and I'm not referring to lost loved ones and things like that, or the whole groups that, because I will say those are the kinds of things that you can't get back. And where I started hunting was with my family, and I'm still hunting with my family, but it was something really cool when you had several uncles and everyone and little guys there and stuff like that. But at the same time, be a part of the next set of good old days, and enjoy what you've got. So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week right here on the Raised Hunting Podcast.